Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji, your host for this very special episode with Chinedu Echeruo, a serial entrepreneur, dreamer, and co-founder of Love and Magic Company. Chinedu believes that individuals empowered by imagination and inspiration can solve virtually any problem. He dared to invent the future starting in 2005 when he founded HopStop, the pioneering travel app that helped millions of users navigate public transportation in major metropolitan areas around the world, and Apple acquired it in 2013. Chinedu also founded Tripology, a lead generation and referral business for travel industry. Tripology was acquired by Rand McNally and now owned by USA Today. Prior to completing his MBA, Chinedu spent several years at JP Morgan Chase, where he was involved in a broad range of mergers, acquisitions, financing, and private equity transactions. Chinedu has been featured in multiple media and is committed to making the world a better, more cohesive place through the free flow of information. I am just so excited and honored, Chinedu, to have you on this episode of a podcast striving to make the world better through a loving and caring leadership. So excited to have you with me.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Chinedu, I'd love first to hear more about your personal story, your journey, your leadership journey behind your amazing achievements.
Well, thank you again for inviting me. So I'm getting more and more courageous and kind of sharing some of the thoughts and kind of my story. So thank you for making space to share with your community. So I grew up in Nigeria. Nigeria is on the west coast of Africa. So I came in when I was 16, but before I got to the US, I was always struck by poverty and suffering, not because I experienced it personally, just because I think I grew up in a very privileged way, but I saw it all around me. And I remember as a kid, my great plan to end suffering on the African continent was to breed rabbits. You know, I had this idea that rabbits, I read in a book somewhere that if you rabbits had lots of children. So I figured, again, this is my 9-year-old mind. If I got rabbits and they breed it, then it will be like an infinite number of rabbits, and that would end Africa's hunger problem. So I actually ended up actually going to my mom, asking for my savings and investing in a rabbit cage and rabbits. And the experiments didn't work, but I think that idea of using business to solve real human problems has always stayed with me. Then through my years in investment banking and finance, I think I got a more nuanced understanding of what that bigger system looks like. And I think what I'm excited about now is how can we share that technology of creation of abundance in a way that is practical, but is also sustainable and in a very real way true to like the human experience.
Thanks for sharing your story, Chinedu. So you're talking about business for good. How do you define your purpose before going into the last company you co-founded?
Yeah, so it's actually an interesting question because in a way, the only way I can answer the question is to also answer it for myself, right? So you have this kind of like self-referencing loop in a way, and in a way that's really been my goal over the past few years is try to bring coherence, bring a coherent philosophy of life, so to speak, and understand what is the physics of value, what's the statistics of meaning in a very real way. And so this is the way I think I've been able to make sense of my own human journey and And that's also a framework I think other people can use to create value for themselves and hopefully value for their organizations or meaning for their organizations as well. So it's really, so the simplest way of telling the story is to really think of human experience as the hero's journey. That whoever you are, whatever circumstances you are in, there's something you strive for. There's a set point of imagination or goal you seek. And between where you are now and that goal are dragons of complexity, things that just stop you or at least are fearful, right? So what I think good are things that remove the fear, remove the dragons, remove the obstacles to human subjective progress, right? So in that way, so if I can do that for other people, then that's value for other people. So if with the teachings we have and in our services, we can help people conquer complexity, help them achieve their own imagination, then that's in a way that's the most service I can bring to someone else's life. So maybe let me make it more practical. So let's say in the healthcare industry, for example, there's a human being that's in pain, real pain, mental pain, physical pain. And if you can ground your organization in the transformation of that human being from where they are now in a state of suffering to where they aspire to be, ease, lower anxiety, lack of pain, happiness. If you can ground your organization in the transformation, in the necessary transformation of that human experience from bad to good, then you would have really done the best you can do, right? Really to transform human life, enable that human being to be where they want to be. So in a way, so that's the way I frame my purpose, is if I can build systems that can help human beings reach the goal they want to reach, then that will be my most service to the world, and it will be the most meaning I can create for myself. So that's the way I've tried to frame this question. But obviously, this is something that's taken me a while to think about. How can you create coherence through the dimensions of work, personal life? There's so many aspects that all need to have coherence.
Wow. And this is ultimately having impact on leaders who are driving organizations, and you're multiplying your impact by thousands, right? That's so powerful.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And it's one of those things where it's also my hero's journey, right? Because the Herculean statement I made has to be backed up with lots of thought, lots of action, and lots of storytelling to really to kind of share the ideas in a way that's palatable and understandable to people. Because in a way, that's the really real friction for us to share and truly communicate with each other. So thank you for saying that.
Sure. You have in your latest company you co-founded, Love and Magic. Well, I'm so interested, obviously, with both words. You know, our podcast is focused on love in organizations, and we share this word. And magic is just such an amazing word to drive innovation, imagination, and imagining a better word. How did you came up with those two words? And then if you can tell us a little bit more about your company and what you do there.
Sure. Okay, so I was in Nigeria. This was 2013. My two sons were my twin boys were about to be born, and I was asking, really God. I was really trying to find purpose and clarity of what the next part of my life would be. Then all of a sudden, Apple approached the company I founded called HopStop, and then literally in a 3-month period, Apple acquired HopStop. Okay, and at that point, I realized, okay, well, what just happened and why can we have more of that, right? What is, really the question is, how do ideas turn to things? Like, how did I go from not where, as a hedge fund analyst, I wasn't sure about creating a startup, and I went from that point to having exited HopStop, right? So what was that process? So what I realized then is, like, if I could imagine the best life possible, the most adventurous life possible, then that would be it. Really trying to tame this process of how do people manifest, how do ideas turn to things, how do you go from where you are now to where you aspire to be. So that was the challenge, but obviously I didn't know that there was an answer to the question, but it's really through intense thoughts and dedication to this question that I think we now emerge with some structure that we can now hopefully share with leaders to help them transform a thought, an idea, or a project, an opportunity into something that's real, that's in the world, that's hopefully helping people, making money, growing, and also growing financially, but also growing as a way of helping people, which is at the end of the day the only real sustainable strategy you have. So in practical terms, what we do at the Love and Magic company is we help people birth ecosystems, birth new concepts, and help them put some structure, how they can go from an idea to something that's alive in the world.
That's great. And you talk specifically, the first thing we see on your website is co-building beloved organizations.
Yes.
So what do you mean by beloved? I know the word love, we always have this reaction like love organization. I have it constantly, right? Like how love can work in corporate world.
Yeah, so actually I realized I didn't actually answer the specific question you asked. Okay, so what is love? Like how where is space for love in the world of business? Okay.
Yeah.
So to answer that question, right, there's a whole field of science known as complexity science, right? And if you go deep into that, you'll see is all the world is interrelated in a really kind of spooky, not spooky in terms of it's it's unmeasurable. It's just that you can determine what that correlation is. So the very most mathematical view of reality is this web of interrelatedness. So love, even though it might seem like a non-scientific, non-business word, it's actually probably the most accurate description of what reality is so that's love, right? That deep interconnectedness, that oneness of being, right? So if you understand that, then it has huge implications from innovation, from a technology, from a storytelling, from a business perspective. Then in a way, so you can also think of magic as turning the potential into reality, right? Turning that potential, right, of love, that infinite possibility. How do you now manifest it? How do you bring it to how do you put structure in your imagination? How do you make it real? How do you make it like electricity where it actually helps people in their daily lives, right? So in a way, it's really, you can think of love and magic as that goal, like bringing imagination and love and potential, but not just talking about it, but also bringing it into kind of reality in the form of a structure, in the form of an organization, in the form of an ecosystem, in the form of a startup as well.
So, you obviously co-founded startup, you exited, you're successful entrepreneur, and you obviously built team, right, to be successful, like performance team. And now you're helping other organizations, other leaders build their teams. Is there like a common thread that you are seeing or that you believe in for high-performing successful teams that leaders should have?
Yeah, at 100%, and it's something that as we go on building these beloved organizations, our understanding and nuances of that complexity becomes clearer and clearer. So one aspect that's, I think, in terms of ways of all these frameworks, I think a leader can practically use to really try to harness this potential is to do something that's about matching the values of the people in the organizations and connecting that value to the values of the organization. So any company or any leader that can connect those two aspects has unleashed magic in the organization, has unleashed innovation, has unleashed a creative spirit. Okay, now practically, how would you do that? So the first thing is really taking the time as a leader to have an inventory and have people get to their own levels of self-inventory and self-assessment of what they value. And a practical way to do that is to take a personality test. So there's a site called Understand Myself. And so that has, I think I'm not affiliated with the program, but that's a simple test you can take that I think gives you clinical data on self, who are you, at least statistically, in terms of what kind of personality types you have. Then based on that, you can then bubble up your value. So let me give you an example. So if you're an introvert, right, you probably value one-on-one conversations. You probably value less social gatherings. So that has implications on the decisions you make. If you score high on or low on or high on neuroticism, for example, you're focused on things that are fearful. So in a team dynamics, you're focused on what could go wrong, right? But until you understand that about yourself, right, you can't really be able to know what you value. So personality maps to value. So once you've done that, then you can now map those values to the organizational values. Is there a match, right? And if you can do that, then you've connected the true value, the things that people truly want in their lives, right, to giving them an opportunity to do that within your organizational context, right? So that's the key. And if you can frame the purpose of your organization as helping another person's hero's journey, then you will have an incredible opportunity for people to connect in a very real way to another human being. So the person in accounting doesn't just think of themselves in doing bills and medical records. They see themselves as removing the anxiety around what that patient will receive after the operation, right? So if you framed your accounting, your challenge is this human being just came up through this incredibly difficult experience. It's been 3 months after their surgery. And as a human being, what can you send them to help that journey of transformation, right? So once you frame it like that, then you have true empathy. You have a true unleashing of capacity within your organizations, right? And people can now reframe their work, not just as a thing they do, but as service to another human being. And once you can do that as an organization, you've tapped into love, right? You've tapped into a deep, deep phenomena in life, right? Which is what I just described.
I love this, and I'm totally with you on it, and that's what I'm trying at least to convey also at my level with leadership and this loving and caring, genuinely caring for your people in the organization. One of the thoughts that come, I would ask it from both sides. I would love to hear your thoughts since you're working with teams on this. The first one is from a personal standpoint. Do I want to share those type, you talked about psychology, right? And it might feel for some vulnerable pieces, like, I'm an introvert. Do I want to share this with my manager who might be an extrovert, right? So
Yeah.
and the same for managers. So what are your thoughts for people in the organization, and then for leaders who have people and who would say, for example, yeah, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not here to listen about like all my team's problems, which I completely disagree with. But what are your thoughts about these two aspects?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So wonderful question. So let's just start off with the team members themselves. Okay. So obviously, one of the things that I deal with, and I've heard many people deal with it, is this idea of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, why would you ever have imposter syndrome, right? So the truth is, you should have an imposter syndrome if you're being an imposter. But the question is, are you being an imposter? Simple as that. Are you being an imposter? So what is not being an imposter? And being an imposter is being true, is being as you are, or not judging yourself as you are. If you understand that every uniqueness is all part of the human tapestry, in cultures that didn't have aggressive people were conquered. You need aggressive people to go and defend against the lions and against the enemies. You need introverted people to look deep into the structure of phenomena. You need Einsteins to unravel truths about the world. We need everyone. So I think that's the first thing. And I think perhaps the normative culture of organizations to be a certain way, in a way, deprives human beings of the benefits of the relaxation of being who they are, right? And instead of trying to use energy to be somebody else, which is in a way a waste, why don't we let people just know what type of animals they are? I mean, personality-wise, right? And not try to go from being a lion to being a giraffe. Just try to figure out how you could possibly be the best lion possible. Mm-hmm. And if you're introverted, be introverted. If you're neurotic, be neurotic, but be neurotic in a way that helps us win, helps that customer succeed, helps that customer's frustration go away, make their story come true, right? So I think if we frame it that way, then we relax, then we're not so judging of ourselves of whether we should be introverted or extroverted, right? Come as you are, bring your superpower, because you're not a throwaway. You're unique in your perspective. So I think that's the first thing on the team level. Then on the leadership level, the capacity of the team to discern these dynamics and actually have is actually a prerequisite for a functioning team. A team that doesn't know what individually you value and doesn't map that value to what the team values is a team that isn't a high performing team. So you have to find what's the intrinsic. And again, there's lots of research around it. What's the intrinsic motivation of your team members? And how can you tie that intrinsic thing? And that intrinsic thing isn't an external thing. It's a value, it's a belief. I am this type of person. So the key is how can you bubble it up and then connect it to something the team needs to do so that other human being's life could be better, right? That could be a really simple way of framing it. So individual to organizations, then organizations to human life, right? That could be the connections of value.
I like this is super powerful, and I hope all of us as leaders will take this and are taking this at a daily basis to make our organizations better and the world better. I'd love now, Chinedu, to jump into a section where I will give you one word, and I want to get your first reaction to this word.
Sure.
So the first one is leadership.
Oh, leadership, insight, vision.
What about entrepreneurship?
Faith. Wait, do you want one word or more?
Give me more. I feel you want to give more. Tell me more then.
Okay, leadership, right? So leadership is about steering, right? And to steer, like you're pointing to something, you're telling people, look, there's something there, come this way, go left, go right, go left, right? So in a way, leadership is the capacity to discern a location of value, right? So that's okay. And then you mentioned entrepreneurship, and I said faith. And the reason why I said that is um, there's no such thing as matter, right? So everything is a belief. So entrepreneurship, in a way, is the most epic journey of belief, right? So you're going out on a limb and you're trying to figure out, you have faith that this concept you've dreamed up in your head actually is real. And you've gone on this epic journey of faith to go find it. So that's why I said entrepreneurship and faith.
What about spread love in organizations?
Spread love, I would say spread intelligence. Yeah, spread intelligence. Because that's, think about it. Every time you look at any act of suffering, any injustice, right? At the end of the day, it's really, in a way, you always think of it as an act of ignorance in some way, fundamentally, right? So if we frame love as really just about enlightenment, right? It's just, you just didn't know, right? You didn't know that she was you, right? You didn't know your customers were you. You didn't know that human beings were related to the environment. You just didn't know, right? So you polluted the environment. Oh, so in a way, love, in a way, it's like it's a growing consciousness, it's a growing intelligence of this kind of interrelatedness, right? And I think as human beings, we can move up levels of these of consciousness, right? And in a way, love is this constant seeking of connection, right? Constantly, all the time, with all phenomena, right? And seeing yourself in everything, and seeing that kind of that fullness, that oneness of that interrelatedness of all things.
I love how you go from love to this, as you said, deep interconnectedness, and then to this oneness, right? And this shared consciousness at the end that we can get to for us to be able to imagine a better world.
Yeah, and it's not just talk, because in many ways I am my biggest skeptic. Like I'm always, everything I always bring in my sort of try to think of some sort of formalism that can really test the hypothesis. And so it's just the truth that you need structure in, everything has to have any symmetry, anything that's beautiful has deep structure in it. So that point could tell you so much about what beauty is. So this idea is like, if anything that's coherent has symmetry, right? And anything that, in a way, you can think of symmetry as a way of beauty, right? It's a description of beauty. So in a way, another way of maybe thinking of what you're saying, and in many ways what I'm saying as well, is that what is beautiful in the world is what is coherent. And what is coherent is something that, in a way, takes in consideration of all things, right? Of all things, is coherent. It doesn't leave anything out. It fits together, right? So in a way, that's another way of thinking about love in the business context, is you want your team to use the most amount of information, to be most aware, to be most conscious, right, of the decisions they're making. You want that, because when you do that, revenue goes up, customer satisfaction goes up, retention goes up, cash flow goes up, stock markets valuations go up, you get a raise, your parents and your children love you more. Perfect. Everyone wins if you do that. So the question is how? How do you unlock that? And it brings back to what you were saying about imagination, is that when leaders are looking for how to grow revenue or how to reduce margin, increase margins, what they're really looking for is how can they really tap into the problem-solving skills of their employees and partners. That's the challenge. How do you unlock the potential, the problem-solving skills of your team? Because if you can do that, revenue will go up. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you do that practically? So the one insight I just want to share here is that the way you do that is by having your team members dare be brave enough to ask a question. And the question is how? How do we grow? How do we help our customers succeed? How do we do that? And but when you do that, then you now have the possibility of imagination. So most of the time we go first with what is and be bound by what is. But sometimes if we start off with a question, how can we do this, right? And you allow your team members to truly express their unique creativity and not be boxed up into the pain and the fear of your organization, you'll find that imagination will flow, ideas will come, right? And those ideas are the hypothesis for you to now experiment with. Go check if that the customer loved that idea, check if retention increased, check if your customer service call rate declined when you did that, send that message to those customers. So that's one way of making this practical. So to think of creativity and imagination and love as an opportunity to let creativity, let imagination come through. And if you can let those things come through your team members, those will lead to the solving of the bottlenecks of growth, the bottlenecks of customer metrics, the metrics of valuations, whatever it is that of your sex is an act of imagination from your team members. So if that's true, invest in it because you'll find that that's where your answer is.
Totally. And letting the team, as you said, be courageous to say how. And I would add one small thing is, and you said it many times, is receiving what they say and actually act upon it. Because many times, we might go and say, well, this is the issue and this is how you need to do it, right? Because we think we're better. But like opening up and receiving the best of our people is so crucial.
Yeah, and again, all I'm saying is also, I mean, there's lots of formalism to it. But another way of saying this is there's an economist named Hayek, and he talked about the optimal use of information in society. And so he basically said, look, everyone should optimize the information, the unique information they have, right? And if we all did that, we would create economic surplus. So in a very real way, when a leader tells their team to make a decision based on their own information, they're being wasteful. So what you want to do is to have each team member given their own unique situation, given their own unique experiences, their own insight into the customer pain, their own insight into that conversation they had on the phone with that irate customer, right? Take all that information and bring it in, right, to optimize the use of information. And so you do that on the local level. You don't do it on the CEO, on the team leader level. You do it on the team level, right? Bring all the people who have different ideas and then mind meld and play around with those ideas, right? And then test it, okay? And it's true what you said. There's a resistance to testing ideas, especially as a leader, if you don't believe those ideas are good. That's very understandable. So to address that, what I would advise is that business leaders set up systems for rapid testing of ideas. Okay. So what I've found is that most of the clients we work with don't have ways they can quickly test an idea. So if you don't have a way you can quickly test an idea, then the cost of testing an idea becomes extremely high, and you don't want to do it, right? Because especially if you don't think it'll work. So if you build systems that will quickly let you test ideas, you'll find that you're more agreeable, and you can let these ideas come out, because one of them could be the idea that you most needed to drive that business metric, and instead of holding on to those ideas, build systems to let those ideas be more quickly tested as fast as possible.
Thanks again for those advices that will be precious for all of our listeners. I want to ask you a last question. Any final word of wisdom for those leaders across the globe trying to make an impact in the world?
Oh, I don't know if I'm to the point of wisdom to your audience, but I think all I have to do is maybe share what I've found. So I've searched high and low for answers for myself, and what I have found is that at the end of the day, it comes back to what we've always known, that it's about love, and that meaning comes from our capacity to help another human being who's us, in finding meaning and finding and making that life story come true. And as a leader, we have the epic opportunity to do that, and do it at scale, and be thoughtful and intentional about the kinds of organizations we're building, and having at the center of your organization your true desire to help kill the dragons that's in the way of the human experience of your team members and your customers. I think that is a coherent way to create wealth for yourself, but also have a sustainable and happy life. So thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Chinedu, for such an inspiring discussion full of tips for the leaders listening to us. Thank you. Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. Follow us on social media and connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com. We're looking forward to reading your feedback and reviews on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify. And most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.